Welcome everyone who's joining online. I believe there are more than 300 of you online right now. Thank you for joining. We will start with a video.
A global crisis is unfolding. Geopolitical tensions are flaring. Instability has once again exposed the vulnerabilities we face from an over-reliance on fossil fuels. Meanwhile, energy demand is surging, driven by AI, rapid electrification, a boom in cooling and manufacturing, and economic transformation. At a moment of profound global shifts, reliable energy remains essential for the global economy and provides the foundation for modern well-being, powering homes, vehicles, and businesses. But now we face a choice. We can meet growing demand with outdated technologies and insecure fuels. Or we can accelerate the shift to pragmatic, scalable, clean technologies that boost energy security and stabilize prices. The decisions made today will shape economic competitiveness, prosperity, and energy security for decades to come. And no one can change the trajectory alone. That's why the first WRI Polsky Energy Summit is bringing together decision makers and thought leaders from across the energy system. Together, we will confront the speed and scale of a changing global energy landscape, and we will connect deeply on the solutions we need to meet the demand surge and gain energy security through clean, abundant, affordable, and reliable energy. This moment calls for leadership. We're here to build the clean energy future together.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning from London, everyone. All of you who are joining us online, welcome to the first WRI Polsky Center Summit, Energy Summit. It's my great pleasure to get us started. I want to invite my dear friend, Fatih Birol, to the stage. Fatih's most important job is he's the co-chair of the of the Polsky Center Advisory Group. His second most important job, he's been a leader of the energy discussion in the world as the head of IEA. And under Fatih's leadership, I must say, and we work with IEA all the time, IEA has become an absolutely different institution of its importance, of its relevance, and Fatih's done an incredible job. As you can imagine, I just want to thank Fatih for being here. He must be the most demanded man across the world at this point. Fatih, come and join us here. Good morning, sir.
Good morning.
Thank you very much
Thank
for
you.
joining us. Fatih, I want to get started with the most obvious question.
Which is
the moment we find ourselves of what's happening in the conflict in the Middle East. Because energy is, because of that conflict, energy is on headline in every newspaper, everywhere in the world. It's just from where you sit, because your IEA's job is to look at the system. How do you see it?
How do I see the situation? You mean? I mean, this is, I would say, 28th of February. We woke up, all of us, with a new conflict started in Iran, and this is the Gulf region is the center of the global energy exports, oil and gas. It was a major shock, and I told my colleagues, I brought my managers, I said, we don't speak to press, we don't go to the events like this, we follow the markets, and if we say something, it could have an impact on the markets. So 3 weeks, IEA was completely silent. We look at the numbers, follow the numbers, what is happening, what is not happening. But then and I decided at the weekend that the world didn't understand the scale of the problem. Still, there is a bit of a underappreciation of the thing, and then I came on Monday, I talked to one newspapers calling this situation is the largest energy supply disruption in the history. We have up to now 3 major energy crises. Many of them are 73 oil crisis, 79 oil crisis, and then 2022 after the Russia's invasion of Ukraine in Europe and elsewhere, the gas crisis. Why I call this is the largest one, because you know me, I'm a man of numbers. I look at the numbers. 73, the world has lost 5 million barrels per day of oil. 79, again around 5 million barrels per day of oil, and altogether 10 million. But as of now in this one, we already lost 14 million barrels per day. When Russia invaded Ukraine, when Russia cut the gas, the amount of gas we lost was 75 BCM, and now we lost more than 120 BCM. So putting all of them together means it is the largest energy supply disruption in the history. Plus, and there is a plus that many of us sometimes in the energy world we forget, through this strait, incredibly vital commodities go through as well. Petrochemicals, helium, sulfur, fertilizers, I will come to that in a moment. So it is a serious situation for the economy, global economy, but mostly I am worried about the emerging and developing countries where they don't have the financial muscles, because we will see inflation numbers may go up. I mean, they're already going up. And some of you may remember 73, 79, when as a result of those crises, many developing countries fell into the external debt spiral. And even there were some political implications, governments fell down. And so it is not an easy situation. And as long as the Strait of Hormuz is fully opened, with giving the confidence, commercial confidence to all the actors, it is a risky situation. And what is happening now, the oil prices are $110 around that levels. People think it is low, but in fact, let's don't forget, it is about the double what it was before. But on top of that, it may go higher up because currently what the world is using in terms of oil, why prices don't go up even higher, is the following. Before this war has started, we at the IEA, and many people agree with us, there was a lot of surplus of oil, lots of buffer. We are using this, plus, and this is very important, countries are using the stocks they have, their commercial stocks, and they are not limitless. We are coming to the end. And the worst thing, if the Hormuz Strait doesn't open in June, next month, sometime in June, around July and August, the traveling season starts. So demand typically, when we come to July, August, demand goes up and the stocks are diminishing, then it may be even more critical than today. Maybe I'll finish this part with giving one more element which is not energy related, but this is fertilizers. I am very worried about this because the three top crops, the wheat, crops, rice, when you look at them, 60% of the production cost comes from fertilizers plus diesel. And both of them are increasing. And we are entering the planting season in many developing countries. So we are entering traveling season and planting season at a time where we have the problem of these two. So this is the situation. I know it's a bit not very how shall I say not very optimistic or whatever you call it, but this is where we are.
We'll get you to optimist end of the day.
Okay, I can come if you wish any moment, but this is there will be a reaction to that. This is what excites me a lot. There will be a reaction, but how this reaction will be is very important to read the game, learn a bit from the history, okay? And there are many, many opportunities to make the most out of this crisis if the world, if the governments, if the industry want to. But if you wish, we can come to that later.
I really like, Fatih, that you mentioned the food, because we hear a lot
I learned
about
from my daughter all of these things. So this is, yeah.
Fatih's daughter worked at WRI too once,
Once.
maybe again. But Fatih, the food issue, the price of urea in parts of the world, India is already skyrocketing. So there is a direct connection, the food security issue that you raised. But I wanted to go back what you said about, to the topic of this gathering today. The demand was already surging for artificial intelligence in one part of the world, for electrification. That's what's happening in India, Indonesia, China. So India, the demand for electricity, Indonesia, air conditioning demand has increased. So demand was already surging, actually, that's why the topic of this thing is about how to manage. How do you see this that you just described about what is happening in the Middle East? Yeah. It's going to impact that demand curve in these two reasons. That it's, again, I want to repeat, it's not just artificial. Demand was other parts of the world was also increasing. Of course.
Now, Ani, this is even before this started, some of you might have heard, I was saying that the world is entering the age of electricity. So what do I mean with that? The global economy has been fueled by different energy sources throughout the history. When you look at the Industrial Revolution, it was fueled by coal. Remember the coal, I don't know if there are many English colleagues here, the coal mines, the people are bringing coal to the factories and so on. Coal was the dominant source. Then coal was replaced, still used, but replaced by oil and gas. We use a lot of oil and gas now, and we will use oil and gas years to come. Okay? But now when I look at the numbers, something very exciting. Electricity consumption is skyrocketing, that we have never seen before. Now, energy demand, you are right, energy demand is increasing, but in the last few years, electricity demand is increasing 2 times faster than the total energy demand. And why it is happening? There are 3 reasons. Of course, there are already some established drivers of global electricity demand, but there are 3 reasons, additional reasons. One of them is, you mentioned, AI and data centers. In my humble view, the artificial intelligence race between US, China, Europe, India, and the others, who will win this race will critically hinge on who will have a lot of electricity available, lots of electricity and cheap electricity. Okay, and because there is no AI without electricity. Finish. But this is a big driver. Number 1. Number 2, electric cars. We just published a report yesterday. The electric car sales today, this year, will be 30% of all new cars will be electric. And 5 years ago, it was 5%. And wait, you will see the trucks next year. If you invite me again, I will tell you the trucks coming in the picture. Third, in fact, the most important one among all in terms of numbers, if we make here a survey, if we close the things, everybody says, I ask, what is the most important driver of electricity demand growth? I think many of us would know. I would myself wouldn't know. It is the increasing number of air conditioners. Okay? In the United States, 90% of the households in your country have air conditioners, so is Japan. But in India, 20%, Nigeria, 5%. With the increasing income levels and the increasing temperature thanks to climate change, people, when they buy air conditioners, very normal. It's a normal, comfortable, reasonable life. So these three are the additional drivers of the age of electricity. So we will see the age of electricity is growing, and I very much would like to discuss whenever you want. I believe one of the responses to this crisis would be acceleration of electrification around the world, not necessarily, I have to be very frank, not necessarily for climate change reasons, but for economic, national security and sovereignty reasons.
So Fatih, I want to come to that. So I just want to say this I think we missed this electrification point you just made. Just what you said about air conditioning, you know, between India and Indonesia in 2018, there were 17 million air conditioners. Now there are 300 million air conditioners, just this period. And these two countries' growth curves, as you know, the 400 million middle class people in India only today. So because we focus a lot on AI-driven demand, which is we should, but the demand is actually surging for all over the world.
Exactly.
So just coming back to this idea of demand curve growth, this is true.
Yeah.
The point you were just going to, how do you see from IEA, because you look at the transition as a whole, and you've been arguing, even before the demand surge took place last 5 years, that the transition to go forward, it actually, a lot of it needs to be clean, not has to be clean, needs to be clean for us to match. How do you see it now?
So we have many wishes at the IEA, so but nobody cares. Therefore, we look at the numbers. I tell you a couple of numbers. Last year, Annie, of all the power plants built in the world, 75% were renewables, and of which biggest share goes to solar. Solar is the biggest winner here, and followed by natural gas and nuclear power. So why I am saying this is that IEA wishes this, IEA wishes, we wish, everybody wishes something. It is happening not because we wish, it is happening because of the economics of the story. If we had a discussion 15 years ago on this, I mean, solar, when we talk about solar in the IEA, solar was a romantic story. Okay, very nice, very good. But now it is a business, yes, it is everywhere. Now, my biggest hope is that we find ways in economic sense, in a secure way, solar plus batteries make a perfect sense 24/7. It's not yet there. I know there are different views by our numbers, but we are getting there very close. This is one. We will see a wind a bit slower, and I think, I don't know, there are different views on this technology, but I think nuclear power will make a big contribution as well, especially small modular reactors. And we have, I don't know if we have many European colleagues here. In my view, Europe made a tremendous mistake, okay, by turning it back to nuclear power. 20 years ago, I was talking with a colleague now. In Europe, 30% of the electricity was coming from nuclear power, but now it is going down. So, and also, I have to tell you that we will see also natural gas will have an important share, especially in the United States, because of the data centers. You need a lot of electricity very, very quickly. But the problem with natural gas is that if you want today, and we decide today is Thursday, by Friday, you were inspired by this discussion, you order a gas turbine, you wait at least 5 years. There is a big backlog there. So this is one part. The second part, this electricity generation, second part is on the demand side. So what we have to do, we have to generate as much as possible electricity, in my view, and we have to use as much as electricity. What does it mean, use? there are many areas that we can electrify. One of those transportation sector. I mean, I mentioned the cars, but believe me, trucks are on their way to come. Second, the heat pumps, they will come through as well. And third, the biggest problem I have today is the grids. How do we make the grids, smart grids, and how do we link everything together? There are some good examples. I will not give the names of the companies, but it is very important if we link the demand, generation, and the users together in the right way with the smart digital technologies.
But the electrification, as you said, I think lots of amazing things are happening on electrification, even in high heat sector. Faustine here leads a whole, meaning on cement, steel, glass, the things that we thought would be difficult to electrify. There's a lot of innovation going on there. I did want to, because you mentioned nuclear. I wonder if you could give me a short, because nuclear gets discussed a lot in both ways. Yes. That it is an incredible solution, we should invest in it, and as you know, in the United States, there's a lot of excitement. A lot of venture capital is actually in nuclear and small. At the same time, the other side, that this won't be available for a while and it will be much more expensive comparatively. The relative cost of unit of energy. Yeah. What is IEA? You don't have to give a long answer. I just want to know where IEA is on this.
So I cannot say IEA. We have member countries who love nuclear, member countries who don't love nuclear very much. So there are different views between them. But at the IEA, put it this way, we say what we believe is the right thing, and they agree or disagree. I was 2 weeks ago in Berlin, in Germany. There was this Petersberg Climate Dialogue they organize every year. Yep. I told the Bundeskanzler Merz, I said, I follow, Mr. Prime Minister, the German energy and Bundesliga. Do you know Bundesliga? This is a football thing. It is also not very exciting because Bayern Munich is always champion. It's
not as good as not as good as the Turkish one.
Yeah, not Turkish. By the way, if there are any Arsenal fans, let me congratulate them. So this is so after so many decades. By the way, if there are any Arsenal fans, what is the secret of being a champion this year? If they want to know, please see me after this break. I will tell you. Now, I told him the following. Mr. Bundeskanzler, I don't understand a country like Germany, okay, decides the nuclear power plants, this is my view, okay, which are working like a Swiss clock, which brings about 30% to German electricity, you shut it down, and you try to find ways to, I hope I don't insult anybody, you find ways to replace it with the green hydrogen from Namibia with the pipelines. It doesn't go through my head. And this is the country of Immanuel Kant. It's the country of reason. It's not a very. It is not a. It's a numbers, mechanics, and everything that I don't understand. This is, of course, some people like it, some people don't like it, but especially the existing ones shutting down is, in my view, a strategic, historic mistake. And Bundeskanzler, I have to be honest, he himself said later on that it was a historic mistake of Germany doing it because Germany has a major competitiveness problem today. But nuclear is not a solution to everything. And nuclear needs huge amount of capital, especially if we are entering an era after this crisis when if the interest rates goes up, the financing cost goes up, this capital intensive infrastructure will be more difficult to build. So in my view, there is a need for new models to finance this, and plus I expect small modular reactors will be much faster to come to the markets as well, because they are in the United States and elsewhere. The AI companies, data centers, they have deep pockets. These technology companies, they are making some steps in that direction. The SMRs may come. So nuclear is not a panacea, but I think nuclear power should be part of the total energy mix. But the lion's share of global electricity generation growth will come from renewables. That's what our numbers show.
Let me ask a question.
Of course.
To move from this topic, something that is close to your heart. You always talk about it, and I just want to see how what's happening in the world. There's still 2 billion people who have not clean cooking fuel. There's 7 to 30 million people that still don't have dependable electricity, and IEA always talks about it. And we know that, and that's something we should talk about. I'm sure we'll talk about today. But my question is, how do you see what's happening right now, what we just discussed last 20 minutes? How does that impact the bigger access problem we all are trying to solve?
Badly. I think I am very worried that from this situation, the continent which will pay the biggest bill will be Africa again. So first of all, Asia is at the forefront, because Asian countries, when you think about it, 80% of their oil and 90% of their gas comes from the Hormuz Strait. And this is a big wake-up call for Asia to think about this. But if the prices continue to increase, it will be Africa which will pay for that, because the LPG prices will go up and the inflation numbers will go up. Africa this is climate change. Africa's share in the cumulative CO2 emissions is 3%, but the worst impact of climate change comes to Africa. Again, Africa has nothing to do with the climate change problem, but they pay for it. And this war, Africa doesn't have anything to do with this, but Africa may again pay for it. Clean cooking is the following, for the colleagues who do not know. This is, Annie knows, I'm since almost 30 years, 3 decades, I am trying to do something on this. In Africa today, 4 out of 5 families, use wood, agricultural waste to prepare the meal. And this is mostly women. And doing this creates a lot of respiratory disease for women. It is the second reason for the premature death for women in Africa. Every year, 500,000 women dies from that. And this is something very simple to solve, for God's sake. It's very simple to solve. And but what is needed, one of the quick solutions is the LPG. But now, given the situation now we are talking, neither the countries have the muscles nor the companies have this priority. We are organizing every year we organize a major summit. It's like this summit in Kenya, the President Ruto, and I have the United States being part of it, Norway, African Development Bank, to raise money for the countries. But this will make the Africa's job once again more difficult.
Because we also have to have innovation there, because LPG is a very good solution, but given where we're going, well, LPG, we can see it already in India, where they made great progress in getting LPG, but now the LPG costs are.
Exactly.
So, Fatih, as we close in this room, this incredible group of people are going to spend the next few hours thinking about true solutions to be just the problems we talked about. What are the 1 or 2 things you want everyone to remember as they go to their groups and think about it?
I want to, maybe one thing I can say to remember. I don't know if you remember or not, but I tell you what, because I'm learning from history. When this in 1973, 1979, 2022, we had 3 major crises, and there will be any major strategic responses which will change the global energy map. For example, we talk about nuclear. In fact, the real birth of nuclear power was a reaction to the oil crisis. Second, before the 70s, the oil crisis happened, an average car to drive 100 kilometers needed about 20 liters of gasoline or diesel. And after that, it was a transformation. It required only 10 liters, the car fuel efficiency. Yep. Or other things happen, not always the right things. For example, Europe made, in my view, a historic mistake. Europe thought to have over-reliance on Middle East is wrong, which is the diagnosis is right, but Europe pivoted to Russia for diversification. So there will be a lot of choices to make. In Europe, after the Russia's invasion of Ukraine in 2022, the renewable capacity installations increased by a factor of 3 because we make the licensing and permitting much faster, give them strategic priority. So there will be responses to that. This excites me a lot. If we are able to make these responses going in the right way, which helps improve the affordability, energy security, and also sustainability, then this will be incredible, the change in the global energy map. And I can assure you, I talk with many governments around the world, developing countries, developed countries, everywhere. I go to Canada, I go to India. Every country will review their energy strategies in the next few years, yes, and they will come with this. So there are so many brains here. They should help these governments, companies, to make the right plans. And these right plans are not only for the sake of helping the betterment of the world, but it will also help their companies and those countries' economies. The chance, I finish with this, the difference between now and 70s is the following. We have much more now cost-effective and available technology with us compared to 70s. We have to make good use of it, good planning, and go forward.
Thank you very much. I hope all of us remember. Give a big hand to Fatih. Yeah? Fatih, thank you so much. I also want, I mean, it's great that Fatih Birol is here, but I also want you to give a big hand to what he's doing right now for the world to bring actual evidence and sensible sense. Thank you for what you do every day, Fatih. You know, I said earlier that one of the reasons we wanted to hold this summit in London was because of you. All of you are here. But one of the other main reasons was we were very, very excited about what UK government is trying to do right now in energy. We feel UK government is trying to do what Fatih said, to have sensible policies to see, as a government, to see if change can be made at a speed and scale. And I have the absolute privilege to have Chris Stark here. Chris Stark is a Clean Power 2030. I think a lot of you know Chris. But he's kind of the architect behind thinking through that. And we have invited Chris to give us a frank update on this simple question. When a government actually has clear intentions of creating a policy to make this transition Fatih just talked about at speed and scale, what are they facing, how they're doing it, and how is it going? Chris, over to you.
Thank you so much, Annie. Thank you to all of you for coming this morning, and thank you, of course, to Fatih and to the Polsky Centre. Very, very pleased to be here today, and I will be frank, and hopefully this will be an interesting introduction to the rest of the day. It is, of course, a moment of profound energy insecurity, and that is the discussion that we always have, and that is spilling over into the lives of people around the world right now. But it is also a moment, as we've just heard from Fatih, when something important has changed. I think for the first time, the clean and the cheap solutions can scale fast enough to compete with the problem. And just as we've shown, and as IEA have been saying consistently, the capital flows don't lie here. So the economic gravity has shifted, I think, decisively towards clean tech. Too often, let me start with this, some politics. Too often, the political narrative is out of touch with that reality, that economic reality. That's why the analytical rigor that the Polsky Centre and the IEA bring is so vital in this discussion. We need platforms like that to ground the energy debate in data and not in dogma. Because I think you can see the frailties of the old energy system have never been clearer now. So that's my one bit of politics. I'll talk now about what we're trying to do here in the UK. And let me start with something that everyone in this room understands very well. In times like these, governments have to make important decisions. And there's a stiff political penalty for indecision in these moments too. There's also a big price tag if those decisions are poor. I think we have a good plan in the UK. So this morning, let me tell you about how we are approaching the energy transition in these moments, and how, of course, we can work with all of you to ensure we're not walking down this path alone. So first, that frank assessment that you asked for, Annie. In the Middle East, the conflict is unresolved. There is lasting damage to oil and gas production, which we haven't yet reckoned with. And just as Fatih has been saying just this week, oil inventories are depleting. You can see that happening in real time. The events of the last couple of months sharpen, I suppose, a reality that we already knew, that our energy security is still being determined far from these shores. It is outside of our control here in the UK. Every time we face an energy crisis, we rediscover the same truth. We are too exposed to international fossil fuel markets. We are exposed because 90% of families in this country rely on gas or oil to heat their homes, because 70% of industrial processes still rely on fossil fuels, because 90% of cars on our roads run on petrol or diesel, and because our marginal pricing model means those international gas shocks still dictate electricity bills, even when we use wind and nuclear generation. So, yes, domestic oil and gas production from the North Sea is very, very important. It will supply some of those needs. We are certainly not turning off the taps in this country. But that issue has sucked up far too many of the headlines in the last few weeks in the UK. Britain has been a net importer for the last 20 years. Production in the North Sea has declined 75% over the course of this century. So we need a more strategic response, one that reduces our exposure permanently. That wasn't the response a few years ago in the 2022 crisis. £50 billion of public money was spent in this country shielding consumers from high prices in 2022. That £50 billion could have covered the entire cost of upgrading Britain's grid. It would have insulated every home in the country with money left over. So I think we can do better this time. We choose to lean in to the story of clean energy. We choose to invest in clean, homegrown power. Over the last couple of years, I've been leading this clean power mission. It has moved from a political ambition, which was actually formed in the 2022 crisis, to full-scale delivery now in this country. We are supporting renewables at much greater scale, alongside new energy storage and new nuclear. We are implementing the policies to deliver that. We're growing this country's transmission capacity, which is a generational capacity, a generational challenge. And crucially, most important of all, we are doing the difficult things. So we're clearing out the critical barriers to faster deployment, to permitting. We have performed surgery on this ballooning connection queue, something we also see around the world. We knew there would be hard yards on this. It is mostly grinding, unglamorous work, but we've stuck with it, and I think it's paying off. You can see that in the results of the last two renewables auctions here in the UK. We have enough clean power in those two auctions for 23 million homes at what I think is a very good price, especially given prices today. You can see it in the supply chain that is gearing up to grow the transmission system across the country. You will see it shortly when we announce the support that we're going to offer for long-duration energy storage projects across the country. And you're also going to see it in the longer-term reforms to the system that we're implementing now. So the Strategic Spatial Energy Plan in this country, absolutely critical. Our plans for what we call reformed national pricing, which we think will reshape how we design and build the system and the signals that we send on its operation. That's what happens when government gets serious about the energy transition. But it is not enough. So I think we enter 2 years in the midst of this crisis, a new phase of that clean energy mission. Phase one was about laying the foundations. It was about the system architecture for 2030 and beyond. Phase two has to be about making that work for people in this country. So in the coming months, that means three things. First, we're going to go further and faster on that story of clean power production. We've brought forward the next renewables auction to July this year. We are ensuring we minimize the barriers to clean power wherever we can, smoothing the path to repowering, which is a big feature of the UK story. Permitting, of course, development for key infrastructure, Renewables on public land, something we've really opened up. Solar in public buildings and schools. People need to see that we are responding, I think, as much as understanding it. Above all, we want to drive the rollout of smaller scale renewables and solar particularly over this summer and beyond that, of course, too. The consumer interest in this country and across Europe, I know, in clean tech is sky high now. It's popular. We need to rise to that and ensure that those households who most need the benefits of those technologies are among the first to receive them. So that's the first priority. The second is breaking the link between gas prices and electricity prices. I mentioned it already. But clean power is now starting to displace gas as the price setter in the wholesale market. We have already moved from gas setting that price around 90% of the time in the early 2020s to probably around 60% of the time this year. With that acceleration in renewables that we're trying to engineer, we estimate gas will set the wholesale price probably around half of the time by 2030. But look to Spain, and you can see a country that has a high penetration of renewables combined with some targeted structural interventions. They've compressed wholesale prices. That's what we're targeting here. We need to bring that future forward for us in the UK. So we've moved to de-link through what we call a new wholesale CFD. We are reducing the carbon price on gas generation, which will actually accelerate decarbonisation through lower electricity prices. And for the consumer, we've moved levy costs off electricity bills, and we've got more to do there. We also have a warm homes discount that's there to help for lower income households. But ultimately, there is no silver bullet on bills. Those costs have to be recovered in the system somewhere, unless we take a bigger leap. And that brings me to our third priority, and it is the most important one of all, and that's electrification. Clean power is great, particularly if you care about decarbonisation, but it's only great when it delivers value for people when they use it, and that's the key point. Moving from wasteful fossil fuels to clean, efficient electrified transport, electrified heating and cooling, electrified industries, cheap energy storage, it's essential that we reverse the trend of decades in this country of declining electricity consumption. We can also deliver on the promise of a more flexible energy system. We can have more extensive use of domestic batteries, smart EV charging, rooftop plug-in solar. Electrification and the integration that's required for the technology across the system has to be the new priority, just as building the system was our priority 2 years ago. It matters, of course, for net zero, but it matters more because this is how consumers will see the value of that clean power, the benefits of moving consumption to when it's cheap for them, the benefits of securing this country from oil and gas price spikes and future energy crises, of course. It is not easy to do this quickly, but now is a very, very important moment for us to try. Right now, high fossil fuel prices are a punishing, regressive tax across our whole economy, across the whole global economy. I am under no illusion about how tough this might be this winter. But we can still use this moment to reset the incentives. We need to narrow what we call here the spark gap. Choosing the cleaner option is a lot easier when you know that it's also the cheaper option. And we need to grow electricity demand, really critical point. We need to grow electricity demand in this country so we can spread the increasingly fixed costs of the system that we've built over a larger demand base. More demand will actually lower the unit price of electricity in this country. That's how we will permanently reduce electricity bills. That's how we'll also unlock a more flexible energy system. Consumers are not passive consumers anymore. So with EVs, with batteries, with smart tariffs, they can shift the demand to when electricity is cheapest. And that is the exciting proposition that we can offer to people in this country. But we should be honest, we had more consumers on time of use tariffs in the 1970s in this country than we do today. So that has to change. Now, I don't discount how challenging all of this is, but I know there is huge interest from people now to switch. Electric vehicles have crossed the economic tipping point. They have better lifetime running costs than petrol, upfront price parity in some of the key segments in the auto market. The economic argument is essentially settled when it comes to transport. Each month, we're seeing that in the sales records that are being broken. It's exciting to see that, but of course, we want to try and ensure that lower income households and drivers get those benefits too. France shows us that you can do that. That's exciting. Interest in solar installations has absolutely rocketed in the wake of the Middle East crisis. we need to make sure there are appealing ways for households across the country to finance and of course to fund those installations so that householders and businesses can quickly see the bill reductions that solar brings. And batteries, completely central to the whole story I've told, continue to fall in price. Domestic installation of batteries, I think, is now a mass market proposition. I think it's credible in this country for electricians across the country to lead the charge on battery installation. Those batteries, of course, allow you to shift that load that we spoke about. They are also the gateway for heat pumps, for solar, and for EV charging when the consumer's ready. So we, I think, can capitalize on the desire for change among people today. Now, I'm a climate guy. My career has been based thinking about the future of the pathways that we need to decarbonize this country. But I recognize that the politics of net zero are more polarizing than they were before. This isn't a climate issue. It doesn't need to be a climate issue at all. I think it's far more about the straightforward benefits that come from clean technologies for people. The promise of something better is something that people, I think, instinctively understand. And just finally, to close, some humility about this, particularly in a room like this. I don't claim that we have all the answers for this, but I do think this much is clear. Every energy crisis exposes the weaknesses of the old system, but it also creates the conditions for a better one to emerge. So there is an opportunity in the midst of a crisis to do more than just manage it. We are very sure that we can build something more secure in its place across the country. That, I think, depends on making clean power real, visible, and above all, valuable for people that we serve. Those are good themes, I think, for the discussion today. So thank you very much. Stay there.
For a minute. If I can ask you two questions.
Of course.
Because what you said, so what you're trying to do, Ed Milliman, Jonathan, trying to do is, I think everyone in this room is supportive of it. But you would agree with me that it hasn't been easy.
No.
Right? It hasn't been easy.
No.
Good intentions are not enough. Can you share with this group, which would be so helpful, what is one lesson from your journey so far?
So, look, lesson number one is it isn't easy. We kind of knew that when we came in, but we've set this pledge to clean up the power system by 2030. And lots of people 2 years ago said this was the wrong thing to focus on. I'm absolutely sure it was the right thing to focus on. But the lesson, I think, is that you need to have a proper plan for that. You can't just set aspirational targets. You've got to have a sense of how you will achieve it. And you've got to be willing to do the difficult things. I spoke a bit about that in my talk, but the difficult things are not sexy things to do. They are about clearing the way to permitting. For us, the big story was actually the connections queue, as we call it. We had in the queue far, far, far too many projects because of the explosion of interest in renewables projects across the country. We actually had to go in and do a very difficult thing. We were still in the middle of the difficult moment, which was to go into the queue and curate it, essentially. We needed to put to the front of the queue the projects that the country most needed to be developed. And as we speak today, they are being handed new connection agreements. And that is enormously difficult. You're putting private investors' noses out of joint when you do that. And we were willing to do that. And the other big lesson was you cannot just say that you want to do it. You've got to also put the policies in place to make that happen. For us, we had a whole set of policy changes that I won't bore you with, but among them, really big and important steps to procure the renewables at the scale that we thought we needed, including extending the term of the offer for the contract for difference that underpins that, to make it much more appealing for those investors in the middle of a difficult moment for investment across Europe. And like, we can see how that has played out, but it's rewarding to see that. I think the other lesson, and if Ed were here, I think he would say this too, is you probably only get 2 years at this if you want to have an impact. Now here we are at the 2-year point. Everything after this year is unlikely to feature in the 2030 power system. So we wanted to run at it full pelt. And I don't regret that at all as we talk today.
But you said one very interesting thing earlier. You know, it takes a while for consumers to see the whole benefit. And so in this case, the consumers still are waiting to see some of these things you're putting in place. And this is true for every country, right? This is a systemic shift. If you could say 1 minute about how does one manage this period without broad consumer acceptance of what you're trying to do, which is where we're going through. And you're absolutely right. When you get it right, there'll be. but every country will go through this moment.
Yeah.
What is one thing that you can share with the group as we think about today?
So that long future of a renewables-led energy system, not just power system, is a very good one for the consumer, right? So I spent a lot of time thinking about the mid-century. By the time we get to the mid-century, that kind of power system is going to be fantastic for consumers. But we're not at that point now. We're at a point of investment. So you're absolutely right, and we have to be able to tell a story about why we're doing difficult things. But I think we also have to pull forward some of that future to today. And that has been the hardest challenge for us. We've thrown a lot of fiscal power at that by moving some of the costs off electricity bills that have been driving costs to be higher than they are. But we have to accept that electricity bills in this country are higher than they should be and higher than I wish they were. I think a big part of the next part of the story is we have to explain to people how growing electricity demands can be better for them. And in the midst of an energy crisis, that's a little easier, actually. And what I noticed, certainly in 10 or 15 years of actually looking at this stuff, is that the consumer wants this stuff now for the first time. You see that with electric vehicles. You can see that, of course, with solar. You can also, I think, start to see the interest in things like batteries. I think that's an easier sell to people. So the story we need to tell them is, look, prices are high, accept that. But there are opportunities for you to save with that more tech-enabled future. And if we can get those technologies in the hands of the people who most need that because they are low income, then I think we've got a really nice story to tell the country.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Andy.
Thank you, Chris. Thank you very much for being here. Amazing. You're doing an amazing job.
Thank you.
Thank you. Chris, thank you. I think there's lots to learn, I think, what's happening in UK right now. And you just heard the ambitious policies in place, and financial, not just policies, money behind it. And it's still not an easy journey, and that is what is to be learned. But I think you guys are doing incredible stuff here. I just wanted to, I want to thank all of you who joined online. I think this is the end of the live stream. Thank you for joining. You will find more snippets of this, what's happening here, later on our website. So please tune back in. Thank you all for joining online. I just wanted to bring this part.